Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much. I would like to start, thank you DCF, especially Abhijit, for inviting us and having us here to share with you how to deliver a positive impact and how to make it happen. I'm going to be building on the presentation we've seen this morning from Dr. Idris this morning on how to make impossible possible, and from Esteban on how to make things happen, how to create positive impact. And I'm going to be focusing in one aspect, that is how to build successful coalitions to deliver impact. Okay? So building on Esteban's presentation, we see 4 big trends that come together. As you can see, one of them is that the divided between social and economic good is no longer valid. We need to understand that only sustainable economic solutions can bring from social good. Second is that governments can no longer do things alone. And if they do things alone, are not sustainable and cannot deliver the value that we want. And at the same time, private sector organizations are struggling to reach and to build sustainable value chains, to reach markets or to get sustainable supply from small farmers or from small producers all over the world. And this combination of government not being able to solve the economic problems and create sustainable solutions, and private sectors being deprived of accessing more than half of the market in the world, creates an unstable equilibrium. Doesn't allow the systems to maximize the value that is created. Therefore, and we see and hear things to the millennials and things to the communication, a huge demand from society to transform these systems. And for that is where we're going to be talking about coalitions. And why do we need coalitions? We need coalitions because there's some problems that cannot be solved unless we do it together. There's problems that have been there for centuries, and no one can have been able to solve them by itself. We talk about endemic poverty, and probably here in Maharashtra and in India, we see communities that do not have the means to sustain their lives, and they have not had it for hundreds of years. And these communities have never been able to get out of poverty. But we see it with many other problems. Some of them is a growing problem, and this morning it was shared by Dr. Idris, that is diabetes. Diabetes becoming a problem that no one can solve. Okay? And I can go on and on and on. And these problems, if I take the Sustainable Development Goals by the United Nations, come from different combinations of the 3 pillars of the Sustainable Development Goals. There's reasons that these problems are based that we are not meeting basic human needs, and that we are not building the foundations for well-being, and we are not creating opportunities. So only combining these 3 elements, we can make these problems be solved or be improved in many cases. Let me take one example on how this is interconnected and why we need to bring together. Let me take the domestic violence example. If I take the domestic violence example and I compare with the Sustainable Development Goals, and through thorough research, we analyze what are the causes of endemic domestic violence, we see that all these elements are interrelated. And there is no single player that can solve all of them at the same time. We see that there are elements based on the basic human needs, which would be very obvious, but there are elements related to creating opportunity, which are quite far away in the value chain of well-being. So we can see on the right side that access to finance for women to create or to be entrepreneurs could be part of a solution to end with domestic violence. And at the same time, basic elements about education or about health are needed to bring this together. And no one can make it happen at the same time. So for that reason, we need coalitions that bring government, private sector, NGOs, and donors to solve these kinds of problems. Let me put an example Palladium is doing in Latin America that can help to understand what are we talking about. It's going to be about poverty and poverty eradication in the cacao value chain. Okay, it's a value chain made of smallholders. Okay, so what is the challenge? And now I'm going to give you devastating news. The challenge is the world is running out of chocolate, and that's really bad. Okay? Demand in Asia is growing very fast, and middle-income countries, and we need more and more chocolate. We like chocolate, we love chocolate, and more demand is there. So how many of you has done business school or economics here? Okay? So when demand grows and supply doesn't grow, what happens? Price goes up. Then, therefore, who produce cacao should be richer, should be sell for a bigger price. That's the obvious microeconomics knowledge that we've learned in school. The truth is that it's not happening. Smallholder farmers that produce cacao are starving. Their average size of production is 1 hectare. Their average income per day is less than $1. And that has been like this for the last 150 years. Okay? So it's a system that even there's growing demand, supply is not growing, and the ones that create the supply are not benefiting out of this challenge. And that's why there's a system that is stable but not efficient. And most of the endemic problems are based on that, on systems that are stable but not efficient. Okay? And to change these systems, you need to put a lot of energy. And this is the system. The system includes suppliers, people like Syngenta that provide inputs, seeds, fertilizers, these kind of things, in one end. In the other end, you have consumers, ourselves, that we eat chocolate, and we enjoy very much chocolate. We have the retail chains, we have the brands, like Cadbury, all these ones. We have the middle people, buying agents and traders, and we have the smallholders. Many of them very small, very isolated, very poor, without enough education and means to grow. Okay? And this system has the support of governments in the consuming countries and in the producing countries. That's the system that today, and for the last 150 years, has been providing cacao. But this system, which works because we have chocolate in the stores and we eat chocolate, makes that consumers do not get as much chocolate, and the chocolate that we have is not traceable. We don't know where it comes from. We don't have enough fine flavors. We don't have enough fine quality. And at the same time, the smallholders are struggling to make their living, so they need to use their children to produce because they cannot send the children to the school. And they cannot afford buying good inputs to produce cacao. So they cannot buy good seeds, they cannot change the trees, they cannot buy fertilizers, they cannot use tractors to make it happen. So the suppliers are not getting the full value of a huge industry where they could be selling better inputs to create more production that would create more chocolate and more quality of chocolate that we would enjoy. Okay? And at the same time, the governments in the producing countries are struggling to develop their societies and their people, and the governments in the consuming countries are trying to fight children work or modern slavery. So out of this system that is working, no one is getting its results. No one gets what it wants to get. Okay? So this is the system we have today. And the question is there incentive to change the system? And the answer is yes, there's huge incentive to change the system. So the smallholders, they have the incentive to be able to access inputs, access training, access finance to grow their plantations and to be more productive. The consumers have the incentive to get more demand, more volume, and buy more at more price with better quality with traceable products. The banks have the incentive to get many people that is not in the banking system into the banking system and becoming part of their product services and give them credits and give them financial services, insurances to support their production. And the people in the middle, the supply chain managers, have the incentive to have robust and predictable supply of cacao that today is not there. So everyone has an incentive to change the system. The problem is that many times systems, as many scientists, probably there's some people that have studied science, when they are in equilibrium, to take them to a different equilibrium, you need a huge amount of energy to transform them. Because by default, systems that are balanced do not have enough energy, enough entropia, to create a new system. So you need a huge amount of energy coming from outside, from donors, from governments, from private sector, from NGOs, to move to a different system. And how would look like a system that works for the cacao and solves the big challenge that we have, that we are getting no chocolate in the future? It would look like this. So it looks in a system where farmers, smallholder farmers that are the smallest unit of production, as Dr. Ortiz was talking before, the smallest P&L is the P&L of the farmer, that's the smallest P&L, are put at the center. They are the core of the solution. They are not the problem, they are the core of the solution. Therefore, the system needs to understand is how can we increase the ability of these farmers to get better inputs and to get access to the market. How can we make sure that these smallholder farmers do not use their kids to produce cacao, but they send their kids to the school and they have enough means to produce with better quality. What are the incentives to make these smallholders not to destroy the jungle and have a huge problem of deforestation and just get more productivity out of the plantations they have? And for that, you need to bring together this access to credit, this access to offtake with a guaranteed quality and support, and this increase on the price. Okay? And that's exactly what the coalition we've been building and operating over time in Peru is trying to do, bringing together all these players. And who are those players? Okay, so this is what we're trying to do in Peru. Who are those players? So first and foremost, the chocolate companies. They have a huge incentive in having reliable, traceable, and sustainable supply of chocolate. They are the first ones that are interested in changing this. The problem is that they don't know how to deal with thousands and thousands and thousands of smallholders. It's very far away in their value chain. At the same time, we have the supply chain manager. They have an incentive that is making more money, selling their cacao at a higher price with better return. We have the technology suppliers that have the incentive to be able to access a huge amount of clients. And we have the banks that have the incentive to get a huge amount of new clients with a reduced risk. So if you bring them all together, the impact is that you transform the value chain. And you transform it in a very meaningful way. When you bring these coalitions together, the impact is transformational. So you look that the income per day, on average, is multiplied by 4. In most of the cases, by 6. That means that a smallholder farmer, which is the key of the solution, has 6 times more money to educate his family, reduces his incentive to deforestate the jungle, and gives him the means to invest in growing the supply and in creating a sustainable supply chain. And at the same time, the companies and the consumers, we have better cacao because we reduce the average price of or the average age of the trees, and we reduce the average and the quality of the trees increase. Okay? So coalitions can transform systems that are an imperfect equilibrium. And we find these imperfect equilibriums in many spaces. One of them is the smallholder farmers' value chains, and probably here in Maharashtra that's very applicable. We have a lot of smallholders, and those, by definition, are imperfect systems. So bringing coalitions that create incentive for all the players can transform that. We have exactly the same in industries and in the skills development space. We're talking about tourism, and I think one of the elements that was being highlighted by the secretary and the ministry and the minister was the skills capabilities. So another one of the imperfect systems sometimes is uneducated workforces that cannot access meaningful jobs that do not allow to develop industries. So that's another example of systems that are in equilibrium but do not deliver value. So this is the structure of our partnership in Peru that brings these different elements: market access, training and technical assistance, innovation and technological transfer, access to finance. And this combination of elements, putting the smallholder at the center, putting the problem at the center. What you have to put is not the solution, is not one part of the element. What you put at the center is the core of the problem. And you only think, how can I transform this problem into something beneficial? And the outcome is extremely good for the farmers, extremely good for the consumers, and in this case, extremely good for the planet through the sustainability of forestry, which is one of the big challenges that we have in the 21st century. Okay? So I'm a consultant, so I cannot avoid putting frameworks at the end of a case. So what are the common elements that partnerships hold? How do you build a partnership? How do you bring together? So several elements. First thing, and most important, is you have to have a common purpose. You have to have an element at the core of the problem. What is the problem we're trying to solve? What is the common objective, the unique problem that we want to fix? And then, who are the players around this problem that we can create incentive for to create a solution that brings social good, very important, and most importantly, it's going to be economically sustainable. We are not talking about charity. We are not talking about doing something that solves a problem for a period of time. We are talking about transforming a system that will create enough incentive for everyone that is in that system to continue in the new equilibrium and not going back to the equilibrium. When the government money is withdrawn, this system should keep going because everyone is getting out of it an economic return. And that's very important. So you bring these people together, and you understand how each of them is going to get benefit of it. And here are the 5 elements that make these coalitions work. First, common agenda. What are we going to do? What is the problem we're going to solve? Second, and I think it picks up on the conversations we had this morning, share measurement. What is the unit of measurement that we need to see that we're progressing in solving these challenges? How do we measure success? What is the measure of success? Then, what each of us is going to do? What are the activities? What are the projects? What are the initiatives that each of the players are going to be leaving the room with their to-dos? What the banks are going to be doing, what the investor is going to be doing, what the government is going to be doing, what the input companies are going to be doing, what each of us commit to do in a very clear plan. Fourth, continuous communication. Communication between the partners that are putting together a solution, but communication to the players and to the society. We are committing to solve a problem. We are communicating we're going to solve this problem. And we're explaining how, and we're holding accountable, and how we're going to make it. That's why this morning, many of the things that were being explained by Dr. Ortiz were resonating on me. That's exactly how you solve impossible problems. By promising that you're going to solve them, committing to solve them, explaining how, and holding accountable in doing so. And fifth, a backbone organization. This is a coalition, so you need a core that holds everyone together, that measures, that holds people accountable. And this backbone organization is the one that is in charge to transform the system and has an end date. Again, it resonates very much with what Dr. Idris was saying this morning. This backbone organization is meant to be made redundant when the new equilibrium is done, when all the incentives are realized from the different players. Okay? And again, here it comes my consulting DNA. This has different phases and different stages. Okay? And basically, they are the three stages. No? One is identify the problem and bring together the partners. Second is architect the solution. And here, what you need to leave the room, and he was talking about the labs, is one of the methodologies, is we don't leave the room until we don't know how the hell are we going to solve this problem. What each of us do we commit to do to make this happen? And then you need to implement. And implementation, transforming systems like this take time because, and what is very important for us, when we talk about coalitions, we're not talking about a small transformation, we're talking about transformations at a scale. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of people or millions of people being affected. And that requires time. That requires time to get to the new equilibrium. And this requires perseverance and requires learning from your mistakes, going always back to the purpose. What problem are we trying to solve? That's what we committed to do. Are we delivering? Yes or no? If we are not delivering, how can we achieve the purpose? By delivering it. And this can be done. And this is being done. And I think the state of Maharashtra and the Deliverng Change Foundation is an example of how to bring together coalitions to transform the life of millions of people. Okay? I think we're talking about the example of the water. We're going to be talking about the example of smallholders. So don't think that any of the big problems that the society has today cannot be solved. The important thing is identifying which one is it, who are the people that has incentive to transform that system, and bring them together. Okay? And with that, I just want to finish asking you which one of these we're going to be solving. And the list can be endless. And I think we can solve all of them. And it takes a lot of determination, a lot of passion, but in the coming years we're going to see, and I think Esteban mentioned of it, millennials want to work for organizations or want to work for themselves or want to create companies that solve these big problems. And none of them is impossible. All of them are possible.
So we will solve this gender and inclusion.
Yes.
So that is the priority of the budget CPA.
Yes. What's the question, sorry?
You asked about priorities. So this is the priority for us initially.
Fantastic.
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 Gender disparity is there, and that we have to manage.
Fantastic. So here I have a volunteer to create a coalition for women inclusion. Okay, probably we will have to work out what is the specific problem we want to start with, and then identify who are the players that have incentive to make this change and change this equilibrium. So thank you very much for volunteering. Thank you very much, everyone. That's what I wanted to present. And I think later my colleague Peter is going to explain very much how investors could be an essential part of this transformation. How capital is looking for this type of coalitions to finance them getting economic return, which may be counterintuitive, but I think it's going to be a really nice presentation that Peter is going to make for all of us. Thank you very much.